A shocking surgery to remove an alien implant caught on tape. A flying saucer fragment found. UFO landing sites located. All the work of a special breed of investigator.
I have seen an overwhelming amount of physical evidence.
I'm absolutely convinced that UFOs are real.
These real-life X-Filers believe the truth is out there, and their goal is to discover if science fiction may actually be science fact. They are UFO hunters. The job of a UFO hunter is the quest for ultimate truth. They seek proof that we are not alone in the universe. They present evidence that we are being visited by beings from other worlds. But does proof of such visits exist? And if so, would that change people's opinions of UFOs and UFO hunters? In 1985, one man, Bob White, claimed that he'd found a fragment of a UFO.
I was traveling from Denver to Las Vegas with a young lady named Jan. And in the high desert, if it's a bright, clear night and the stars are shining, which it was, you could see forever. I was asleep when she woke me up and asked me what this strange light was. I didn't know. So I stayed awake and we watched it. As we got closer to the light, it got bigger. We stopped the car to look at it. The light was so bright, I had to shield my eyes like this to look at it. She turned the headlights on for some reason, and when she did, this thing just shot up in the air that fast. And when it got up in the sky, it connected to another light, and then this object was ejected from it. When I first saw it, it was glowing red, and it just looked like a glob of something. And it was too hot to touch. My first thought was, what in the world could it possibly be? What could this be?
Once the object cooled, White placed it in the trunk. What you are seeing is the actual object White recovered.
This is what it looked like after it cooled down. The only difference is the end piece on here was rounded, and that was cut off for an analysis by Los Alamos.
The jagged fragment, measuring 9 inches in length and weighing over 1.5 pounds, was subjected to isotopic ratio and other elemental composition tests at the U.S. government's Los Alamos National Laboratory. After several weeks of testing, White finally talked to a technician.
He was very excited about it. He said, "This is definitely extraterrestrial. It's something I've been looking for all my life." And I said, "That's wonderful." So I told newspaper columnist Mike O'Brien that. He called and talked to the same scientist. And the same scientist told him that he didn't say that. And he said, "My bosses have instructed me not to talk to anyone about this." And that was the end of the conversation.
Los Alamos would not return phone calls or respond to inquiries for this program regarding the unusual sample. White sent the object to 8 different labs, including MIT, New Mexico Tech, and Scripps Laboratories. While they all concluded that the complex structure was mostly aluminum, White feels that its origin may have been revealed in the results of one of the tests.
One that I consider to be the most important was done by a scientist that was on a team of scientists that found a meteorite in Antarctica, and they found a meteorite in India. And they measured the isotopes in strontium and determined that they were from Mars. Well, the same people that did the analysis on those things did the analysis on the object that I have. And the measurement falls right in between the two from Mars.
Another anomalous fragment, nearly identical to White's, was found some 40 years earlier. The story was confirmed by declassified U.S. government documents.
They have an object almost identical to this one that was recovered by the CIC, the Counterintelligence Corps, in the 1940s in Denmark. And their words, not mine, their words, is it's a piece of a flying saucer.
In 2004, White passed 3 separate polygraph tests administered by both law enforcement officers and a certified polygraph examiner to further authenticate his claim. But still, he found no help getting his story out. The journey drained his savings and his spirit.
I didn't ask for this to happen to me. I didn't need this. Didn't want it. Didn't want people to call me a UFO nut. And I didn't even believe in anything like this. But once you see it, once it happens to you, you have to be a believer.
Bob White's quest for the truth defines the modern-day UFO hunter. But what exactly does that mean?
The term UFO hunter is a rather peculiar one because it covers an awful lot of ground. You can hunt sightings, you can hunt people, you can hunt documents. For me, it's a combination of those plus hunting an audience to talk to.
In the past, I've tried to focus on the government cover-up. And we'll talk about the FBI, the CIA, the Air Force, the NSA.
I'm convinced that this whole question of alien visitations is the biggest story of the millennium.
And Stanton Friedman would know. A nuclear physicist from the University of Chicago, he has spent more than 40 years in the UFO field. Friedman is considered one of the most knowledgeable UFO hunters. A relentless pursuit of the truth and a passion for answers is the link between the UFO hunters of today and those of yesterday. Are UFOs real? Was a question frequently asked by the man regarded as the original UFO hunter, Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
J. Allen Hynek was an astronomer with Northwestern University. And early on, when Project Blue Book had been set up by the U.S. government, they had hired J. Allen Hynek as their scientific consultant.
Project Blue Book was developed in 1947 by the U.S. Air Force to scientifically investigate the UFO riddle. Hynek was its chief civilian consultant, and he went in as a skeptic.
To this time, there is no proof that I would consider valid scientific proof that we have been visited by spaceships.
Hynek eventually realized that he was not given full access to the data. One example of this is the investigation of the 1968 UFO sighting over Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota.
He was asked by the Air Force to go there and investigate the case, and when he arrived in North Dakota, he was prevented from talking with the witnesses. So it was the fact that some of the cases, the very good cases, were indeed going somewhere else.
After 21 years of working with the government, Hynek's opinion on the reality of UFOs changed. With Project Blue Book ending, Hynek concluded that there was need for further study of the UFO phenomena. UFO hunter John Schuessler agreed. He co-founded the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, which continues today to investigate UFO sightings.
The Mutual UFO Network began because there was no place for people to report UFOs. We became a reporting spot.
Schuessler and Hynek garnered respect in the UFO community. However, another UFO hunter emerged from the University of Arizona's Institute of Atmospheric Physics, who used his credentials as a scientist to revolutionize the way his colleagues viewed UFOs.
Before James McDonald entered our field publicly, the scientific community was completely ignoring the UFO phenomenon. McDonald was the first prestigious scientist to openly declare his interest in this phenomenon.
Ann Druffel has been investigating UFOs for more than 57 years. She has uncovered Dr. James McDonald's personal journals and has written the only biography of McDonald titled Firestorm.
He gave hundreds of talks to scientific groups on UFOs. And he would express in his journal that he had concentrated on the fact that the UFO phenomenon was a serious scientific problem. He was the top hunter, shall we say.
Jim McDonald, because he was so convinced that this was a major subject, managed to get congressmen to sponsor hearings back in 1968. 6 scientists testified in person, including McDonald and Hynek, and 6 more of us submitted written submissions only.
Following the example set by McDonald was UFO hunter Dr. Frank Drake, a professor of astronomy at Cornell. Drake helped create one of the most recognized names in the study of life in the universe, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI program.
The SETI program looks at the issue of, are there planets around other stars? And if so, then what is the easiest way for them to communicate with us?
With radio telescopes worldwide, SETI searches the skies for radio waves from other intelligent life in the universe. Dr. Rudy Schild, research scientist at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, believes that SETI has its flaws.
In my view, SETI is an approach taken by people who are very smart and who think that they understand alien technology well enough to be able to exploit it and to give us direct evidence of alien civilizations. Whereas UFO hunters are people who are also smart, but doing the obvious thing that we always do when we see something we can't understand. We get out our cameras, our Geiger counters, and whatever we've got, and just make observations. And I congratulate the UFO hunters because I think they're going to get there first.
Have UFO hunters finally found a smoking gun? Proof of alien life here on Earth or even under the sea? And later, are humans being abducted and tracked by aliens? Exclusive footage of a surgery to remove alien implants may just change your mind about UFOs.
These objects contain metals which are not from this Earth.
Here's me, and here's my depression. Before I started taking Abilify, I was taking an antidepressant